Welcome back to In the Harbor, the podcast where sports, leisure, and finance meet. I'm your host, Jason Johns, and today I'm joined in studio by Paul Zimmermann of Matick Auto Group. Today we're going to discuss the auto industry in Detroit, how it differs from the sales industry nationwide, and a lot of parallels between all businesses, what sets them apart, and how you can make an impact on your customer base. This is In the Harbor. Welcome to In the Harbor, the podcast where sports, leisure, and finance meet. I'm your host, Jason Johns. Today I am joined in the podcast studio with Paul Zimmermann of Matick Auto Group. Welcome to the pod, Paul.
Thank you, Jason. It's good to be here.
We're happy to have you, and especially when we start talking about cars. We are in Detroit, or the metro area. I think there's few cities and industries that are more closely tied together than Detroit and the car world.
100%. The Motor City, the industry that really ignited the auto boom 100 plus years ago, and I'm fortunate enough to be a partner in three different brands that are headquartered in Detroit, and Chevrolet, Buick, and GMC. And much to the chagrin of our OEM partner, General Motors, we do have a Toyota store as well. So we have a unique experience from a global footprint of working with the largest domestic automotive manufacturer in the world, and also now the world leader in sales. So back to Detroit, it's a unique market for our business because of all the employees and suppliers that are intertwined and make Detroit their home. So for us, it's a little bit of a unique experience versus, say, I think running dealerships around the rest of the country.
Absolutely. And would you say from a dealership perspective, being in Detroit and being so close to the headquarters of the big three, is that a big advantage, do you think, from the market aspect?
It's unique. I think, for one thing, it's all I know. So it's, I think it's definitely got some advantages. And I think there's other times where maybe from a market standpoint, market demand, pricing, power, et cetera, that it's a little different because of the proliferation of supplier employee discounts. A lot of our business on the GM domestic side is employee based pricing, supplier based pricing. So again, that's a fixed number. Whereas I've got dealer friends around the rest of the country, and those prices don't exist. And so our margins are probably a little more constrained and/or I think challenged. But we also have, I think, a lot of unique insight that a lot of my cohorts around the rest of the country don't have. I've got neighbors that are executives and have developed relationships with a lot of the leaders in our industry, whether it's General Motors and/or Ford. And so therefore you get, I think, unique insight as to what's on the horizon, what's a challenge, and/or what we might be able to potentially take advantage of having that insight.
I have noticed a lot of dealerships in the area, when they're marketing new cars for sale, there's the employee discount already included, and then when you don't have any connections, you get a bit of sticker shock on the new price.
That is a big challenge for us, and I think, to your point of that's how it's marketed, most of the consumers in this market, over 50% of our customer base, has that employee price. And so we have to speak to the majority, and it is unfortunate. And I think we've searched for years about how to find that healthy balance between speaking to the majority of the folks that are looking for the lowest price, or that's what's going to get them to engage with us, but also to be respectful of those who don't, and really trying to make sure that they don't feel like somehow this is kind of a gimmick or a bait and switch or that type of thing. So it's been a challenge for us over the years. I think, in some ways we have found at times a sweet spot to really try and over-communicate that, albeit whether it's a short snippet of a radio or television ad, or, how do you put it in the disclaimer where it's not just fine print, quote unquote, in a newspaper ad. So always searching to create that balance between making sure that folks feel respected and that they understand what the information is we are trying to pass along, and or what they would qualify for, so they don't have any heartburn or negative reaction to what they may or may not qualify for once we engage.
So, Paul, if we take a step back, let's get a little bit about kind of your life path and how you got into the dealership business.
Sure. So I'm fortunate enough to work with my oldest brother, Carl. He and I are business partners. Carl is the majority owner, and as we have talked about over the years, he is the mastermind behind our strategies and big picture outlooks and where we're headed next. And then myself I'm more in the day-to-day operations. And on top of that, we have another partner, Molly Williams, who Molly and I, again, probably oversee most of the day-to-day operations of our 3 dealerships. And then we have a car wash business and some other properties, a collision shop, et cetera. So she and I are engaged in the day-to-day, and the 3 of us, our strengths and weaknesses really pair well together. And so as I bring up Carl, he was involved in the business when I was still in high school, and I've done everything in a dealership world environment besides turn a wrench and sell parts, which is good because I'm not a wrench turner. So it's a fortunate thing for most everybody that I never tried to get into that aspect of the business. But I always, when Carl was in it and I was working after schools just looking for a part-time job, I was always really interested in it, and I just had I don't know, I think a love for it from the start. I think a lot of what you had brought up before, Jason, in terms of the Motor City and this being our industry, I've always been a little bit of a homer as it relates to sports and just nobody can talk junk about my buddies but me and that type of thing. It's just the way I'm wired, and so I always had a little bit of a connection to the auto industry and wanted to be a part of it, but I went to college and went to Albion College and played football and lacrosse there. And when I got out, Carl was trying to recruit me to come work with him. And I thought at that point, I said, well, you're a dealer, you own this. And there's only one of you. What am I going to do? And over a few years of being in a different industry and getting my feet underneath me, I wanted to take the leap of faith and knew that he needed help and thought that, again, we were a good yin and yang together. And so that was over 25 years ago, and it's been truly a success, and it's fun to work with your brother. It's not always fun, but it's rewarding, and I think we've both gotten a lot out of it. And if nothing else, we can trust each other. So,
well, I think that's a big aspect of it when you're in a family business too. There's going to be an aspect where if it's an outside partner, you're maybe not going to be as honest with them as you would be if it's somebody you grew up with.
Yeah, and we've had lots of challenges where I think in some respects, if it was a different industry, if it was not family, some of the thoughts might be, is this something I want to continue to keep doing? And might I look for another path or another opportunity? And I think of the biggest one that sticks out in my mind is when the world's financial collapse of 08, 09, and General Motors went bankrupt. Chrysler went bankrupt, ran out of money, and needed the government's bailout. At that point in time, they wanted to close a number of dealerships, and there was a lot of challenges out there. And I think a lot of folks that in those OEMs that were in duress, making challenging decisions, and there was really no guarantee that our industry was going to survive. And at that point in time, Carl was the sole proprietor, but I was kind of his second in command. And we had a conversation one night about how is this going to work? Are we going to, fight or flight? And what might that look like? And kind of looked each other in the eye and said, look, we've been through this before in the backyards or on the basketball courts, and we're going to fight through it. And you work on it, I'll work in it. I'll make sure everybody is confident that this industry and our business will survive. And so I just view that as one example of many of other challenges that we've had. But knowing, as you put it, Jason, when you're with family, that you've got each other's backs, and there's really a belief and a trust there that is different than if you were working for a quote unquote boss or somebody that you didn't know for that long. So.
Yeah, and I would say just the level of honesty you can have with each other.
100%.
As business partners and brothers. I think that's great.
As our other brother would often say, honesty is a gift. So you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, some people don't take it as well as others.
100%.
So I saw a quote that was out there, and I think it was in a book I was reading, and they were talking about there's a difference between honesty and tact.
Right. we're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, not everyone has both.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we focus on the dealership business, how has it evolved over the years since you've been involved over the last 25 years, you said?
A lot of changes. It's I think it's gone from an industry that when I first got into it, there was so much negativity, folks, a generation or generations of having poor experiences, whether it was a lack of transparency or dishonest dealings, or just I think it just had a lot of negativity around it, and so I think I personally was very sensitive to that as I got involved in the business and wanted to really work and strive to build our culture, to really inoculate ourselves from that that kind of sting or stench, if you will, from the rest of the dealer groups or that industry. And so we've tried to be as transparent as possible in our dealings. And that started again 25 years ago. But now with the internet and the ability to get, pricing within minutes, and in this world that we live in terms of the Amazonification, where you can order something and have it, delivered within a few minutes or hours, the sharing of information, us having to get information into the consumer's hand is paramount, and to be efficient about it and to have that communication be as clear as possible. That didn't exist 25 years ago. Heck,
Right.
the internet, the websites barely did. So now, as I've often described before, you might have a family that's eating dinner, and Johnny just turned 16, and Dad says, "Johnny, let's go up to, Old Man Dealership's lot, and we'll take a look at what he's got for under $10,000." Well, now that same conversation at the birthday dinner is, let's get online and look at, the different third-party websites that whoever's selling what for under 10,000, and then we'll drive there, whether it's 90 minutes, 2 hours, or 20 minutes to see what it looks like tomorrow or the next day. So the internet, the request, the belief, the expectation for quick and clear communications information has really changed our business, and I think there's just a lot greater expertise or understanding from the consumer, I should say, that they understand the workings of how a deal should be. Detroit's a little bit different. It's just a more sophisticated customer because so many people are involved in the business. So it's we could spend an hour plus on just every single aspect of change within our industry, but I think the one constant that we try to communicate to our people often is that the only thing that's going to stay the same is that this constant evolution, right? We've just gone through a period of major EV introduction into our industry, and as one example. And so the point to our people that we always make is we don't write the rules, we just play the game. And so if that is the introduction of EVs or the reintroduction of sedans or smaller cars or whatever it might look like, we have to continue to adapt and make sure that we are at, if not the forefront, but that we're quickly trailing behind, that we don't get left, in the back, so to speak, so that we can continue to grow and provide opportunities for our employees and then our customers.
So if we go back to what the constants are, I would imagine it would be client experience is paramount, and that's
100%.
Universal across
Without
all
question.
sorts of industry. And a lot of dealerships have been building out bigger showrooms and then more amenities, be it the lounge to have coffee in while your car is getting serviced. So how do you think about that?
It starts with people every day. I think, we have 3 locations, 4 brands, and 2 of our locations, in full transparency, are very beautiful buildings. One of our Chevrolet store, we're one of the top 30 stores in the country in terms of new car volume. It's a 126,000 square feet facility. It's huge. It's the largest showroom in America, and it's beautiful, but it's the people that make up the experience. So before we renovated that facility, the Chevrolet facility in 2014, it was not as nice as it is now. We had leaky roof, and we had stained carpet from parking cars on the showroom floor that may have had a drip of oil here and there. We had old tile, and a lot of it was cracked, and drywall that was 40 years old. But I always felt comfortable because I knew customers were getting a great experience. we look for good teammates. We don't look for just the best performer in their field, meaning, their end result. How did they get to the result? And so I've interviewed dozens of salespeople over the years that, I know by name in this city, and they'd sit down in front of me and say, look, I can get you 40 cars a month or 50 cars a month, or I'll sell you 700 a year. Just nobody bothers me, and give me a desk and kind of let me do my own thing. And those conversations were typically pretty short. That I appreciate you being direct, but I'm going to be direct with you that this is probably not the right environment. We are more of a team culture. And so that said, as you bring up lounges and the amenities, that is something that we want to provide to our customers. But, our industry is also capital intensive, and we don't always have the ability to go ahead and renovate a facility for $8 million or $9 million. We've got to make sure that we're taking care of the basics first and running the business as best we can, and growing the ability to do it right, measure twice, and then cut once in those types of decisions. So if we have a great culture, if the customer has a great experience, if our communications are clear, if they're transparent, if it's efficient, then I think customers will appreciate the fact that I like doing business with these people. It just doesn't have to be the shiny brand new facility. Makes it nice when you have both, and I think we do in 2 out of 3 of the facilities, and we're working on the third, and we've got plans for it. But I guess my point is that you can have the nicest stuff, but if you're inefficient, if communications aren't clear, if you don't greet people with a smile, basic blocking
Right.
and tackling. Again, we're a retail service business. I mean, there are hours on the door that say open, and so if we have somebody walk in and they're standing around looking for somebody to help them, it could be a Taj Mahal. It doesn't matter if they're not getting serviced. So it starts with people first, and then from there, we want them to have the amenities, as you said, and the things that make their shopping experience, or the times that they're in our lounges for service, or those types of things. That is it's a great experience. It's a wow, but it all starts with people first and foremost.
I can understand that, and I would say it's probably some stats you're probably looking at is repeat customers,
100%,
and who's coming back and buying that next vehicle when they swap it out. The auto industry, particularly on the sales side, it was kind of front and center during COVID when there was chips were out, and then a lot of vehicles were missing chips from the chips manufacturing. Right. Prices were sky high on used cars. How did you guys pivot around that? And then interest rates were still low. Now they're a little higher. So I imagine that impacts your world.
100%. And as I said before, it's never over, right? We're always challenged with something. And I've had a lot of folks ask me over the past few months, maybe a year, hey, are things back to normal? I kind of laugh. Like, all right, well, let's define normal first and foremost. Are we pre-COVID? Are we COVID? Are we supply chain shortage and microprocessors globally? And so there's been so much disruption that I can't even, again, personally remember what normal is. And so how do we handle it? It's just you've got to, I think, first and foremost, have a mindset. And I think it starts with leadership. So whether it starts with me and then transfers on to our directors or managers throughout their departments, that we're not going to waste any energy on I wish or it used to be. That I say it all the time, frustration's a waste of time. There's not enough time in the day, so I'm not going to deal with frustration. And if we focus on, okay, what now? So then how do we execute, right? What's in front of us and where do we go? So throughout all of those challenges, whether it was COVID and the state government said, well, you can't conduct business inside. Okay, well, let's get some tents and let's make sure they're secure and weatherproof, and we'll heat them and the rest, and we'll conduct business within the tent. Or, at our Chevrolet store in Redford, we have a 26,000 square foot car wash next to us that we own and operate. Well, we could deliver cars out of the car wash. However, that made sense because, again, it's still inside, but we did that. Then you go to the microprocessor shortage and then supply and logistics issues that dovetailed that. what now? Well, there's the shortage of inventory. So how do we communicate it to customers? How are we clear that they know we're being upfront and honest with them? And how do we, submit and take orders where we're trying to get these vehicles delivered in a timely manner? All of those challenges are just what's in front of you and then execute efficiently. And we are a big organization. We are big in terms of talking about we want to eliminate waste in all of its forms. If something is wasteful, why are we doing it? And, I often use this term, and John Wooden coined it, the famous UCLA basketball coach, about, be quick, but do not hurry. And so there's a difference, right? Hurried is disheveled. Hurry's don't have a process, right? And so we're process oriented. We want to be efficient. We want to have processes in place amongst all of our departments. We want to eliminate waste in all its forms. And so as you go back to the questions about COVID or supply chain, a lot of times you waste energy, going back to, again, frustration in trying to, scratching your head. And I wish it was like this. I know I've said it before, but first and foremost, come up with the plan considering the circumstances. And then if you have that, kind of rational thought process and positive outlook, I think things will take care of themselves, because the rest of it is basic blocking and tackling when you really get to it.
Right.
So
with the all the manufacturers going the EV route, how has that changed kind of your thought process going forward? I know dealerships are talking about putting in big charging stations. And
yeah, it's again, it's never over. Yeah. So that's been a big, I think, it's been a challenge, and a lot of questions have surrounded it over the past 5 years. What's the adoption going to look like? The market's not there. The infrastructure isn't. How are folks going to charge them? And, going back to this, we don't write the rules, we play the games. And in Detroit, this is a least dominant market. 80% of our domestic sales, so our Chevy, our Buick GMC stores, 80% of those are lease customers on the new car side.
What would you say it is nationwide?
I think it's south of 20.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I've got a friend. We're a part of a 20 group where dealerships, there's 20 dealers. We get together. We share our financial statements. We're in different markets, so there's no competitive sharing of secrets or that type of thing. And we're scattered throughout the country, and it's a good group. We've been involved with it for now 14 years. And I've got a good buddy who's in Texas, Lufkin, Texas, and his name's JJ. JJ does a lot of business, but he'll call our new car manager once or twice a year, and say, "Hey, buddy, how do you do that lease again?" It's because that's all he does. He does one or two a year.
Oh my
God! He's got to figure out how to write it. So meanwhile, we're on it's a Thursday, and we're doing our 22nd of the day. So. So with leasing in this market, EVs, a lot of folks, in terms of the lease consumer's mindset, is what's my payment, right? The price of the car is not so much paramount, because, again, a lot of these folks, it's a fixed price, their employees or their supplier. So it comes down to, okay, so what's my monthly payment going to be on this? And General Motors has, I think, brought to play in these lease dominant markets, Detroit for us, a very attractive lease program and lease structure for EV consumers. And so that helped a lot of people take a stab at it, if you will, if I put it that way. They say, what the heck, it's only 24 months, let me try it and see if I like it. And I think what's come about from that, in the last 36, 42 months, if you will, where we've started to see kind of an uptick of EV sales, range anxiety is probably like the number one objective, right? How do I want to drive up north? How do I, get enough juice to get up there? There's a flip side to that. There's a lot of people that don't drive very far distances.
Right.
A lot of folks that live in Southeast Michigan or, metro areas outside Minneapolis or, Madison, Wisconsin, or wherever it might be, that their commute is 10 miles each way. And so, they might go, 20 miles round trip to work, and they go out to dinner or what have you. So they've gobbled up 50 miles. Well, they're back home at 8 p.m. and they've got a fresh charge the next day, or heck, they don't even need to. And they'll do it once a week because of such low usage. So I think that was a surprise for me, as we were really, I think, concerned about, well, how is this adoption going to work? How are folks going to look at this with that range anxiety? Well, we've learned again, like I just explained, there's a lot of folks that don't need a ton of range. And now I think as we've gotten to a point with our Chevrolet store, we're probably the 10th largest EV dealer in the country. I'd asked our GM rep the other day about where we stood, and I know it's in the top 10. But so we saw a lot of EVs. Yet, come September 30th now, the $7,500 tax credit is a part of the big, beautiful bill.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, it's going away. And so that's a significant impact on a lease. That's a $200 plus swing. And so what does that do to that demand? I think it's probably going to be challenging. Does General Motors pick up some of that with incentives? I hope so. But again, I've kind of I'm searching for intel. I'm asking our OEM partner for insight. I think they're still trying to sort through it, figure it out. And I can't spend too much energy, as I've said, until I know what the rules are. And once we know the rules, we'll figure it out and we'll communicate accordingly and execute. But that's where we're at.
And I think there was a similar tax cut, not EV focused, tax incentive for American-made vehicles coming out.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I get to some of these points where I realize, so I've got my business I have to run, and they've got theirs in terms of our manufacturing partners. And I know a lot of that issue, or the issues surrounding that, were the content of every vehicle. I mean, if you do an autopsy on it, there's parts from every continent in the world.
Absolutely.
Right. Besides, Antarctica, but everything else, whether it's you're mining for minerals or, building transmissions in Canada or shipping them from Mexico because they needed camshafts or whatever from a plant down there. How do you define, American made? I mean, Toyota, Japanese company, number one in terms of American production,
and they have been for some time.
100%.
I think I remember back in the 2000s, early 2000s, the Economist did an article on that.
Right. Yep. So that is, I don't think as consequential, but the EV, the 7500 is again, there was, I think, pacing for about 12% of the overall sales volume for 2025 was EV based, and now I think come fourth quarter that number is probably our GM OEM or partner has indicated that that's probably going to be cut in half. So we'll go from 15 to 7.5%, 8%. So.
Well, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
There is always a positioning on EVs has changed over time too. Mm-hmm. Like one aspect that is rarely talked about is just the performance, because you're not a combustion engine.
Yeah.
Obviously the speed's there. It's going to hurt the battery, but
it's awesome.
There's an enthusiast aspect of it where there's demand.
Yeah.
Rather than just focus on the environmental impact,
right,
which you could debate all day long what that is, but more from an enthusiasm standpoint. And I'd say some of the features, even though other cars are coming out with it now, the automated driving.
Yeah. Yeah, Super Cruise. And, look, I have not had a buddy, a friend, I can't think of any, or a lot of consumers, I should say, that have gotten an EV and have come back and said, I don't like how this drives. They are phenomenal. So, the Hummer EV is 9,000 pounds. I've got a Corvette Z06 that is 0 to 60 in just 3 seconds. That Hummer EV that is 9,000 pounds weighs 3 times as much as a Corvette Z06 and does 0 to 60 in the same time.
It's amazing.
So I always kind of joke. That's like, you got like Bo Jackson, the Hummer.
Yep.
Big, strong, super fast. And then you got this like little small track athlete that's the Corvette. And they go, it's like running the 100 meters in the same amount of time. It's mind-blowing.
9,000 pounds.
Yeah. And flies.
I have an interesting story about the Hummer EV. I was with Sean. We were going out to Owasso to shoot some pheasant, and he forgot to charge before we left. So then we had to stop. We had to charge. It was this whole process. And I was giving him a hard time. So the next time we were going out that way, I said, I'll drive in my, combustion engine. Except I forgot to fill up my tank. So we had to stop anyways. It completely ruined my argument.
How long did it take to charge?
It was probably 30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. it's the technology continues to get better, and like you said, we could debate the environmental impacts, and I was not of full transparency. I think this market has been kind of forced upon us from government mandates and what have you, but I give GM a lot of credit for, again, they were playing the game of the government. We have to have these CAFE standards and/or these the ZEV states regulations, and so they were producing enough to be compliant by 2026 and 2027. And just along the way, they built some great cars. And so, I've driven a Sierra EV, I've driven the Hummer, Equinox, and the Blazer. They're fantastic cars. I mean, the tech in them is fantastic. The drivability, again, how quick they are. So it's this unique dynamic where I think a lot of traditionalists, look at that and, say, oh, I don't want that. But then you get them behind the wheel going back to, I've never had anybody who has said, this is anything but sweet. And so
Right.
I think that has transitioned, convinced a lot of people that this is a viable option and that this is pretty cool. And now, again, is this ebb and flow of sales, is that upon us? Probably, based on $7,500. And how does that look then moving forward? But I do think that there probably are some converts that have said, or will say moving forward, that's the kind of car I want. So
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I know I've only driven one, and I thought it was a blast.
yeah.
My sister has a Tesla in Montana, which makes very little sense in
Right.
the grand scheme of things. But to each their own.
Yeah.
She has to charge it just to drive to my mom's house. But
She needs a 2,500 if she's living in Montana.
yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah.
And the brutally cold temperatures don't help either.
Right. That's an issue. That's an issue for sure.
So if we get into it really quick, I want to ask about the car wash, because I think that's a fascinating business model that's evolved over time as well, with
Yeah.
the subscriptions and everything else. And then it probably folds right into the dealership, where after a car's serviced, you can run it through the wash. And
Yeah, so we've had a philosophy, for a long time that when it comes to somebody's automobile, we want to be their one-stop shop. So, we oversimplify it. If you go to the dentist, you go to the dentist for all your teeth, right? You don't go to one guy for your left side of your mouth and another guy for the the top teeth. We want to be a solution provider for all things automotive. So whether it's we sell them a car, new or used, or service a customer's vehicle, make sure that, again, whether it's basic oil change, tire rotation, something mechanical, or that they really feel unsafe about, it's a collision. We want to be able to offer them solutions for everything automotive, and washing their car, keeping it clean was another aspect of that we had on our radar for probably 2 decades. So we opened up that wash in Redford in 2018, and it's kind of interesting as you talk about that space. The first National Car Wash Convention we ever went to, my brother and I'd say 90% of the attendees, guys, had jeans and flannels on and, own mom and pop car wash shops throughout the country. We go back 4 years later, and it was 80% of them were in suits, and they were all private equity, M&A guys. And,
Yep.
And so in Detroit, this is really one of the last untapped markets, I think, for clean, big, bright, nice car washes like we opened in 18. And so we're opening another one next to our Buick GMC store in Southfield. It is a model. Again, we want them paired with the store so that we can be an automotive solution provider for everything. And I've had a lot of questions asked where, well, are you guys nervous? Are you worried about competition? And first and foremost, I love competition. I think iron sharpens iron, and they make you a better operator, whatever business you're in.
right.
I also think that a lot of these PE guys, they got all this money, and they want to get into a market, and they've got to get a return and get out here in 4 or 5 or 7 years. And some of the locations I see of some of these guys, gals, I question, or I'm kind of excited about, because I don't think they're that great. So we've got 2 of the highest trafficked corners in the state of Michigan at Telegraph and 12 Mile and 96 and Telegraph. So from a traffic standpoint, we're just high visibility, lots of cars coming through on a daily basis. So I love our opportunity, and I love what we're going to be able to provide folks in terms of having a nice, bright, easy in, easy out constant stream of being able to keep their car clean. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
So if we think about things just generally, what's a dream car you've always wanted to own but haven't?
That I haven't. Well, because I was going to say my dream car for a long time was an old 71, 72 Blazer, K Blazer, where they had the hard top and you could take off.
The two-door?
Yeah, one of the original kind of SUVs, and the Suburban really was, but the K Blazer had that just kind of cool look to it. And so I had been looking for years, and last year I got one out of Tennessee, and I didn't do anything to it. It's not the original engine, but it's all the original body and interior, and it's great just driving around to breakfast on Saturdays with my dad, or going to play golf and just kind of putzing around town. But so that was always my dream car. Now I have it, so I don't know the dream car that I don't have. But I'm not a huge car guy, believe it or not. I mean, it's how I make my living, and I know enough, and I've been in tune with Corvettes because we do a tremendous amount of that business, but I don't know all of the ins and outs. Again, I've never turned a wrench. That's not my thing. So I love the the aesthetic look of certain vehicles and whatnot, but I'm not sure I have a favorite that I haven't owned.
Well, I think that's a satisfactory answer. There's the nostalgia aspect of it. And you're seeing that a lot with like the old Wagoneers.
Yeah.
Those are coming back. Obviously the old Broncos.
Yeah. It's a huge business now too. I shouldn't say huge business. It seems to be a market that is trying to be tapped into, which is a lot of these older looking or off-frame restorations that folks are doing now and charging anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000.
Oh yeah.
And they're cool. They look great. I don't know if I'm in the market for that, but
So if we think about all the roles you've had in the dealership, what would anything stand out as the first car you ever sold? Or
well, in terms of all the roles, I think the first car I ever sold, I can remember her name as well, but it was a 2001 Chevrolet Cavalier, and it was a two-door, and it was kind of funny because I had a Cavalier in high school, and I remember thinking, this is somewhat symbolic. Car I drove, and now the first car I'm selling.
First car you sell, absolutely.
But, with all the roles, Sean has asked me this before. We talk about how do you run your business? How do I run my business? And I think it's often like a coordinator in football when they become a head coach. A D coordinator often wants to sit in the defensive meetings, and he's got his fingerprints all over that scheme or that team. And the same thing with an O coordinator. He cut his teeth on running the spread, and now that team he takes over runs the spread. And so I love running car dealerships, but in the end, what I really love is going into the showroom and the sales department and talking to customers or talking to salespeople and just getting their feedback and hearing the action and knowing that we're taking care of people. I love the fact that we stay open, that people walk through our doors, that we get to, kind of have them let their guard down because they know they're being treated well. It's a friendly environment. Again, going back to teammates, not independent contractors. And I love that buzz. Like that just gets me fired up and seeing folks and them smiling and the rest. And I've said forever, man, if this is a big decision, and if we mess up somebody buying a new car, that's on us. Like it should be a great day. I remember when my dad brought home his first new car ever in 1984. And like all the kids, we went around, we'd been playing in the backyard, we were looking at it, and he's yelling, "No, don't put your fingerprints on it."
Right,
it was
absolutely.
Like he was so proud, and I've always thought of that, and that's how it should be for our customers. So anyways, going back, when you said roles, I just thought of, I love still going up into the showroom and seeing what's going on.
That's great, and it brings up another question. What would you say is the over-under on you get the new car smell, you're overly protective, and then eventually, the kids get into it, and you got dirt everywhere. What's the life of that brand new car protectiveness?
Well, it all depends on the owner, right?
Well, that's true.
I mean, I used to be a guy that I would not let, when I got a new car before I kind of got back in or came back to the dealership world, I would not let the gas tank go past like half because it was like, I'm still on the first new tank, which I might have like 5,000 miles on it by then, but it was still
still there, right?
Yeah, it's like keg beer. It's like I'm still on my first beer. But some guys and gals, they turn in their car, and it's almost as nice as when they picked it up. Now, there's other folks that they've had it for a week, and you're like, whoa.
Right.
We've been doing it.
Hurricane went through there.
So my dad, he's 86 years old. He kicks the snow off when he gets into his car. I mean, his cars are immaculate. My wife, on the other hand, and Stacy, I love you. She'll get a new car every 6 months, and we got to do a pretty thorough job of cleaning them. So two different.
Right. Well, I was going to say those two different people often marry each other too.
Yeah.
And
right.
You think about it harkens back to the Seinfeld episode where Kramer's trying to see how far past E he can get the.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those people are out there too.
Yeah,
it's a game.
Yeah. Not me. That's not me.
Definitely not me. Favorite Michigan drive or road trip?
I love when you go up north to Petoskey and you are on 131, and then you make that right-hand turn onto 31 and Little Traverse Bay is on your left there, and then you get into 119 up to Harbor Springs. So I don't know if it's my favorite drive. It's probably my favorite stretch of road. I just as a younger guy, when it was 60, 65, 70 hours a week, any time to go up north was such a treat. And I think when you got to that bend in downtown Petoskey, it's just like the world behind you kind of, it's like a vacuum seal kind of buttons up, and you feel like, all right, I'll either have a week or a weekend, or I'm going to have some fun with friends, or we're going to play some good golf. And there's just something about that drive there that I don't think I've ever not had a smile on my face when I'm on that piece of road.
It's probably the anticipation.
For sure.
Of getting there. I'm going to make that drive here tomorrow. And I would agree with you. Yeah. It's almost like right when you get off 75, you have a smile on your face.
That too, yeah. Or even, and you could keep going, north of West Branch, right? It's like, all right, we're getting there.
All these mental hurdles you go through. Oh, we're past halfway.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's great. Well, are you ready for Michigan football?
Yeah, I think I'm ready every year, and it's a changing landscape, changing world. Had lunch with John Wangler last week, who's a great dear friend of mine, and John was Bo Schembechler's first Rose Bowl quarterback, and his son Jared and Jack both played at U of M, and Jared's now really leading the charge with their NIL operations, and it's just great to always get together with John, but we were talking about how this is just it's so foreign compared to what college athletics used to be. And it's not to say it's bad, it's not to say it's worse, it's just different. And so in some respects, I almost feel like I haven't paid a ton of attention, because who's here, who's not, who's leaving, who's coming, going. But regardless, Saturday in Ann Arbor, or any college campus for that matter, it's some of the best stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's great. And I think freshman quarterback?
Yeah, Bryce Underwood, right? So we'll
local Michigan,
number one recruit in the country, and he's I don't envy him. Somebody will say, well, he's making all this money, but look, he's still, I think at this point in time, I think he's still 17 years old, and we've brought the money to this game. These kids didn't do it. We forced it upon them. And so, like any capitalist, he, took his market value, and I don't begrudge him or fault him for that. But at the end of the day, still a 17, 18-year-old kid who's going to play in front of 100,000 people. And, I've never accepted a fan in the stands yelling at a college kid, what are you doing? Or what an idiot. Like, I'd like to see you, Mr. 40-pound overweight guy, put a helmet on, see if you make it fit first, then throw the ball with 100,000 fans. Oh, and by the way, there's 10, 11 dudes that are trying to kill you. So they're still kids. And that's my perspective, right? And so my enthusiasm's always tempered. It's not that I won't, cheer my head off or that kind of thing, and I won't want to watch a great game, and I don't appreciate, fantastic athleticism. But at the end of the day, I think some of these numbers and the money is really clouded, kind of the average fan's expectations. But I'm excited for just football to get started.
Well, the change is constant, like you talked about with the dealership. It seems to be true universally as well. I mean, it's in
100%.
your hobbies. Watching Michigan football, you got to deal with the change.
Yeah, that's the only constant of life, is that it's ever evolving. So
I thought it was death and taxes.
that too. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with
thanks
us.
for having
This
me,
was a
guys.
fun conversation.
Yeah. Truly.
This is In the Harbor. Thank you for listening to In the Harbor. We enjoyed having Paul join us to talk about the car industry, specifically from a dealership side, and hearing a lot of insights about the local market, the 80% lease stat. I think that was pretty remarkable. But all the constants in business, regardless of industry, take care of the customer. I think that's one of the big takeaways, and that's been a takeaway from a lot of our podcast episodes. This is In the Harbor. We're glad you're here.